We're back to Terry and Jesse show. I got my partner, Paul Clay. Terry's out doing some apostolic work. Paul, St. Thomas Aquinas, the greatest theologian, that's him and St. Augustine, the two pillars of Catholicism. He has a lot to say about immigration. This article is put together by Dr. John Horvat, a friend of the show. Paul, can you share what he has to say?
Yep. In looking at the debate over immigration, it is almost automatically assumed that the church's position is one of unconditional charity toward those who enter the nation legally or illegally. However, is this the case? What does the Bible say about immigration? What do church doctors or theologians say? Above all, what does the greatest of doctors, St. Thomas Aquinas, say about immigration? Does his opinion offer some insights to the burning issues now shaking the nation and blurring the national borders? Immigration is a modern problem, and so some might think that the medieval St. Thomas would have no opinion about the problem, and yet he does. One has only to look in his masterpiece, the Summa Theologica, in the first part of the second part, question 105, article 3, there one finds his analysis based on biblical insights that can add to the national debate. They are entirely applicable to the present. Anything biblical, Jess, is applicable. It does not expire. St. Thomas, man's relations with foreigners are twofold, peaceful and hostile. And in directing both kinds of relation, the law contains suitable precepts. And the commentary is, in making this affirmation, St. Thomas affirms that not all immigrants are equal. Every nation has the right to decide which immigrants are beneficial, that is peaceful, to the common good. As a matter of self-defense, the state can reject those criminal elements, traitors, enemies, and others who it deems harmful or hostile to its citizens.
Let me make a comment. Let me make a comment. Sure. Okay. And that commentary there, that comments on what St. Thomas Aquinas says, that's exactly what former President Donald Trump, he said, and he took a lot of heat for that. And I had no problem with it. And I'm an American of Mexican descent. He goes, a lot of people crossing the border are criminals or bad people. Guess what? That's true. Yeah. That's a true statement. Not everybody that's coming from over there is a daily mass, daily communicant, daily rosary Catholic. You got some bad people. And Dr. Horvat commenting on St. Thomas, he's saying, yes, of course the state can reject criminal elements coming over. I mean, for Pete's sake, a movie came out not too long ago. Paul, did you watch it, The Sound of Freedom?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. The Sound of Freedom says everything you need to know. That was directed by a Mexican production company, okay? Catholic actor and director Eduardo Verástegui and Alejandro Monteverde. And they basically exposed the horrible problems in the border as a result of the cartels. Here's what the movie showed, 4 things. Mexico's the largest exporter of child sex trafficking in the world, number 1. Number 2, the U.S., no surprise, is the largest consumer of child sex trafficking. Does that surprise you when a former president of the United States, Bill Clinton, says, I prefer them young, okay? Number 3, 80% of women that come across the southern border are raped. And after the women are raped, the Mexican cartels hang the underwear of the victim and the bra on a tree branch or bush. I know people that live in Tucson. There are thousands and thousands of women's underwear and bras hanging on trees in the deserts of the United States Southwest Territory. Compliments of the Democrat Party and the Mexican cartels. And number 4, get this. Human trafficking is an $150 billion business. The movie Sound of Freedom is exposing what Jeffrey Epstein was doing in his Epstein Island. This is truly an international diabolical problem. Continue, Paul.
Yes. The second thing he affirms is that the manner of dealing with immigration is determined by law in the cases of both beneficial and hostile immigration. The state has the right and the duty to apply its law. That one says it all right then and there, Jess.
Yeah, and by the way, that's even repeated in Vatican II, paragraph 2241 of the Catechism. That phrase is repeated in Vatican II. And I guess a lot of the bishops just don't even read their own documents, because any bishop that's an open border bishop has not read St. Thomas, has not read the Church on Immigration, or even Vatican II. What else does St. Thomas say, Paul?
Yeah. For the Jews were offered 3 opportunities of peaceful relations with foreigners. First, when foreigners passed through their land as travelers. Secondly, when they came to dwell in their land as newcomers. And in both these respects, the law made kind provision in its precepts. For it is written, and this is Exodus 22:21, thou shalt not molest a stranger. And again, in Exodus 22, verse 9, thou shalt not molest a stranger. So, yeah, that's pretty clear. The commentary here is St. Thomas acknowledges the fact that others will want to come to visit or even stay in the land for some time. Such foreigners deserve to be treated with charity, respect, and courtesy, which is due to any human of goodwill. In these cases, the law can and should protect foreigners from being badly treated or molested. Thirdly,
that's Christian charity. That's obvious.
Yeah. Thirdly, when any foreigners wish to be admitted entirely into their fellowship and mode of worship, notice, and mode of worship, with regard to these, a certain order was observed, for they were not at once admitted to citizenship, just as was law with some nations, that no one was deemed a citizen except 2 or 3 generations. So Jess, I just have a comment on this.
Yeah.
Number one, Islamic caliphates, right? They set up a caliphate, which basically makes it almost impossible to have foreign religions practiced and worshipped on their soil. And we automatically, as Americans, we look at that and says, how dare them? They're intolerable. But yet Islam is the fastest growing religion on planet Earth. There's something to be said. And I believe that this idea of when you look at the history of our church, when we had the papal states and there was no real separation between the state and the church, that is how the religion spread. When you have a bunch of people who are not like-minded coming together, as an example here, we still, even though we're not a Christian nation, we have the remnants of Christianity still left. When we open up our borders and let people flow in with different ideologies, they demand, they want Sharia law, as an example, the Islamic people. They don't want to assimilate into society. And that's important. If you don't want to come to this country to be part of America, to be part of, and it's unfortunate, like I said, it's unfortunately that I can say that we can't call ourselves a Christian nation anymore. But initially that was in fact the situation, because at least the large majority of the people here were united under a somewhat common faith.
Yeah, right. One nation under God. It was the God of the Trinity. It was the God who was Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Yeah. What's St. Thomas's third point, Paul? The third point.
Thirdly, when any foreigners wish to be, we had already read that one, Jess. So St. Thomas recognizes that there will be those who will want to stay and become citizens of the lands they visit. However, he sets as the first condition for acceptance a desire to integrate fully into what would today be considered the culture, life of a nation. I can't stress to you how important this is, Jess, because again, when you take a bunch of people together and you mix them together, and by the way, if you notice, Jess, this idea of separation of church and state, when the state is no longer coupled together with people of faith, and in this case, the church, the two-sword theory, when there's that division, then the state begins to invoke laws that are unjust. And one of the laws that they begin to practice is this idea of religious tolerance, right? Everybody can believe how they want to believe. I know as Americans, that sounds like, yeah, that's right. That's all right. There's only one God. Okay. And therefore, there are false religions out there, and it is not their right to come and worship freely in a nation that is centered and focused on the one true God. Now, again, I know I'm talking the past, but this is where basically this is why I always say Christendom has fallen. They have dismantled Christendom brick by brick by brick, and we only have what I call the remnants of Christianity left in America today.
I'll give you an example, Paul, of what you're saying is France is the daughter of Catholicism. It's a second Catholic country. And today, France, it's being Islamicized. Yes. Catholic churches are being attacked there left and right. Muslims go in and disrupt the mass. That would have never happened when France was at the height of its glory, and when France proclaimed themselves as a Catholic nation. But now that France has disintegrated, like most of the West, into secular nations, and Christ is no longer king of France. This is what we have. Islam sees the weakness because in Islam, the church and the state are wedded. In Catholicism, and I would have to say because of Protestantism, they're the ones that have destroyed this possibility. Because of Protestant Christianity, now they've made it nearly impossible for Catholicism to apply the two-sword theory. Protestants, in fact, when Muslims were attacking Catholics in the Middle Ages, Protestants were on the side of the Muslims, hoping they destroyed us. A second condition is that the granting of citizenship would not be immediate. The integration process takes time. People need to adapt themselves to the nation. He quotes the philosopher Aristotle as saying this process was once deemed to take 2 or 3 generations. St. Thomas himself does not give a time frame for this integration, but he does admit that it did take a long time. St. Thomas, remember, was writing during the time of the Holy Roman Empire. And so there was a strict criteria. You wanted to be part of the Holy Roman Empire, and if you're a Muslim or a Jew, they didn't give you citizenship right away. They made sure that you converted and you accepted Christ as king. And so this is why St. Thomas, he's writing from a 12th and 13th century standpoint under the Holy Roman Empire, which is something that kept Christianity unified. But today, that two-sword theory, I don't think we'll ever be able to apply it here in America. When you even have Catholic presidents like John F. Kennedy says, I'm not going to listen to what the Pope says. And you have Joe Biden, who basically also, gives the birdie to the perennial teachings of the Catholic Church as well. Our second quote-unquote Catholic president. I don't think we're ever going to see the two-sword theory here in the U.S. St. Thomas also says the reason for this was that if foreigners were allowed to meddle with the affairs of a nation as soon as they settled down in its midst, many dangers might occur, since the foreigners, not yet having the common good firmly at heart, might attempt something hurtful to the people. You think? You see what's happening in Spain and France with Muslim enclaves attacking Catholic churches, basically having complete contempt for French and Spanish law. The commentary here from Dr. Horvath, he says, the common sense of St. Thomas is certainly not politically correct, but it is logical. The theologian notes that living in a nation is a complex thing. It takes time to know the issues affecting the nation. Those familiar with the long history of their nation are in the best position to make the long-term decisions about its future. It is harmful and unjust to put the future of a place in the hands of those recently arrived, who, although through no fault of their own, have little idea of what is happening or what has happened in the nation. Such a policy could lead to the destruction of a nation. As an illustration of this point, St. Thomas notes that Jewish people did not treat all nations equally, since those nations closer to them were more quickly integrated into the population than those who were not as close. Some hostile peoples were not to be admitted at all into full fellowship due to their enmity towards the Jewish people. Want to see an example of that? You see the illegal immigration problem. Some states in the country are saying that some of the blue states are saying that they're going to allow the illegal immigrants to vote in the 2024 election. That's exactly what St. Thomas Aquinas warned us against. People who recently arrived, they don't know the happening of that nation. And so their vote could actually lead to the destruction of the nation. Paul, what's the next comment from St. Thomas?
Yeah, I'm just taking in what you just said, Jess. I can't believe there are states contemplating allowing them to vote. And I also know there are states who are allowing them to become police officers.
And join the military.
How in the world, when your status is lawbreaker, law violator, do you all of a sudden become an enforcer of the law and tell its citizens what the law is supposed to say? Anyway, St. Thomas, nevertheless, it is possible by dispensation for a man to be admitted to citizenship on account of some act of virtue. Thus, it is related, and this is in Jude 14:6, that Anchior, the captain of the children of Ammon, was joined to the people of Israel with all the succession of his kindred. This is to say, the rules were not rigid. There were exceptions that were granted based on the circumstances. However, such exceptions were not arbitrary, but always had in mind the common good. The example of Anchior describes the citizenship bestowed upon the captain and his children for the good services rendered to the nation.
Go ahead and continue.
Okay. These are some of the thoughts of St. Thomas Aquinas on the matter of immigration based on biblical principles. It is clear that immigration must have two things in mind. The first is the nation's unity, and the second is the common good. Immigration should have as its goal integration, not disintegration or segregation. The immigrant should not only desire to assume the benefits, but the responsibilities of joining into the full fellowship of the nation. By becoming a citizen, a person becomes part of a broad family over the long term and not a shareholder in a joint stock company seeking only short-term self-interest. Yeah, I like that. St. Thomas teaches that immigration must have in mind the common good. It cannot destroy or overwhelm a nation.
And that's what we're seeing right now, Paul, south of the border. We're being overwhelmed in Texas, Arizona, and California, those three border states. This is something that we've never seen in the history of this country. This is unregulated, unchecked, illegal immigration. And we've never seen these type of numbers before, Paul. And again, I'm telling you, not all the people coming over are daily rosary, mass attending Catholics. Is it a wonder that 95% of the people coming over are males between 18 and 35, military age?
Yeah, they're not coming over with their families. That's a sobering thought. Just let's not forget the fact that even within the country, we have our own problems. We have roving gangs that are overwhelming stores, stealing. So we're not enforcing any laws. And so what do you think is going to happen when we insert a bunch of people who have a completely different background and we mix us all together? That sounds like it's ready to explode. That's like just mixing an unholy cocktail that's ready to bust, Jess. And I don't know if that's by design or they're just that ignorant, but we're in trouble. Like I always say, we're circling the drain here. Yeah.
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 It's the article. If you could wrap it up, what's the last three sections there?
This explains why so many Americans experience uneasiness caused by massive and disproportional immigration. Such policy artificially induces a situation that destroys common points of unity and overwhelms the ability of a society to absorb new elements organically into a unified culture. The common good is no longer considered. This is such common sense stuff, and yet the leaders of our country just don't seem to get it. A proportional immigration has always been a healthy development in a society since it injects new life and new qualities into a social body. But when it loses that proportion and undermines the purpose of the state, it threatens the well-being of the nation. That's what former President Trump has been saying for I don't know how long. When this happens, the nation would do well to follow the advice of St. Thomas Aquinas and biblical principles. The nation must practice justice, charity towards all, including foreigners, but it must above all safeguard the common good and its unity, without which no country can long endure. A nation, Jess, without borders is no nation. What part of that don't they get?
Paul, and I'll tell you, when people talk about, these, building a fence, that's racist. You're racist. Are you kidding me? Yeah. The fact is, when the Jews were set free by the Persian king Cyrus, and he allowed the Jews to go back home from Babylon to Jerusalem, one of the things that Nehemiah, the governor, he told the Jews to build a wall. Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 15. When the wall was finished within 52 days, when all our enemies heard about it and all the surrounding nations had seen it, they were deeply impressed and acknowledged that this work had been done and accomplished by the power of our God. So the Jews built the wall around Jerusalem, and Nehemiah the prophet says, yep, everybody around us said, yep, this is the work of God. You also find in the book of Revelation, okay, people never thought about that. Heaven is called the New Jerusalem, and guess what? Heaven has walls. Great high walls. It's right in the Bible.
Yeah.
It says in Revelation 21:12, heaven, New Jerusalem had a great high wall, 12 gates, at the gates 12 angels, and on the gates the names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel were inscribed. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the 12 names of the 12 apostles. Okay, so let me ask the question. What's the purpose of these walls that are surrounding heaven, the New Jerusalem, the city of God? The Bible answers the question. It says to keep out the dogs, the sorcerers, the liars, and the cowards in Revelation chapter 22, verse 14. So it tells you why heaven has gates, to keep out bad people. So the fact of the matter is, if God told Nehemiah, build a wall in Jerusalem when they were rescued from Babylon, from Babylonian captivity, and the Son of God has erected walls around the city of God in heaven, I think walls are a good thing. In fact, the White House has huge walls, 2 fences as a line of defense to protect the president. Yeah. There was only one fence. Under Barack Obama, they put a second fence. Oh, we'll be right back.